Hey friends, Ash here, welcome back to Gents. Hope you're well. You are never gonna believe what I have. Never in a million years would you guess this. A new Hawas. Yes, it's been so long since we had a new one. Been like what, a month? But finally, Rasasi has released a couple of Hawas fragrances that have been announced for a really long time. And basically up until this point, the only people that have smelled them have been people that have been basically like brought out to Rasasi to smell them. I bought them. And the first one we're gonna talk about is this one, Viper. Look at that, so gold, so fancy. Now I also got this one, Hawas Atlantis. I actually bought this as a 2-for-1 deal, or not even 2-for-1, but 2 in a package. It was definitely not 2-for-1. And I'll talk about Hawas Atlantis here in a little bit, but these have finally popped up at discounters. So I'll have them linked in the description in case you wanna check them out. Like I said, today, Viper. Ho, ho, ho. So let us begin by taking a scope at this fragrance presentation, and we can get into how this smells and if it's one of the best Hawas fragrances or weird. Could be that. The box. On the front, you have the name of the fragrance. You have the size and concentration, 100 ml eau de parfum. Also has like a little snake wrapping around the front of the box, kind of similar to the cap. You have logo up top, nothing on the sides. The snake continues on the back, where you also have a little information, like don't put this in fire, don't spray your eyeballs. Good stuff to know, because who knows how many times through history that somebody's been like, oh. Of course. I was gonna do it, but it's... And then on the bottom, you have your ingredients, you have your batch code, you have your barcode. My bottle was manufactured October 2025, so it's pretty new. And here we have the bottle, your typical Hawas styling, but this one has a little snakeskin aesthetic to it. Nice, slightly different looking. You have on the front there the name of the fragrance. It has this nice gold coloration as well, along with the gold cap that says Rasasi up top. Then on the bottom, you have a sticker with your concentration and size once more. The cap does click into place. Let's go ahead and do a few sprays. Atomizer is good, solid. Now I got this one from Intense Oud, and I do have a code for that website, which is alongside all these other codes that you can use. And I believe that this has popped up at JOMASHOP as well, and it's a little cheaper on JOMASHOP than what I paid for it. Yay, can't tell you how many times I've done that, where I buy a fragrance, the first place it pops up, and like one day later it pops up for $15 less somewhere else. Nice. But yeah, use these codes, save yourself some money whenever you are shopping for a fragrance. And now time for the most important thing, Hawas Viper. How does it smell? And is it worth the wait? Because this one and Hawas Atlantis were actually announced months ago. It was really weird. They were announced before some of the releases that were announced after them, but then those fragrances came out before these ones, at least where you could actually find them. Well, Hawas opens up very strong, really pungent in your face. It's got this biting, sharp green kick as soon as you spray the fragrance on, and it also has this spiciness to it as well. A bit of an herbal edge, so it comes across aromatic, but not aromatic in the way of like a clean barbershop type of aromatic. No. This one is dark, a little bit resinous and bracing. It has the note of cannabis in there along with thyme and saffron. And even though it has saffron in here, there's no real sweetness to soften that initial punch to your nose when you first spray it on. And if you're familiar with Nasamato's Black Afghano, this one is going to immediately remind you of that one. Yes, indeed. Black Afghano, right off the rip. Very, very noticeable, the similarities between this one and that one. So it has this dank, smoky green kind of heaviness to it and a woodiness as well, even though I think in the official note breakdown really doesn't have much wood going on, but you definitely pick it up. And because of that similarity to Nasamato's Black Afghano, it could also remind you of Gucci's Intense Oud, which for a while was like the go-to Intense Oud alternative. And that's why this could remind you of that as well, because they're kind of all linked. So if you're somebody, say, who's more familiar with Hawas, Hawas Ice, Hawas Fire, fragrances like that, more of an easygoing, designer-leaning sort of scent profile, you know, something that's just easy to grab, spray, and go and get compliments, you will be really surprised when you first spray this on. But does it stay like that? As Hawas Viper moves into the mid, that cannabis note, it actually becomes more noticeable. Now, when I say cannabis note, I'm not saying that it smells like you're hanging out at a music festival and you're just catching wafts of weed in the air. And I'm not saying it smells like a cloud of pot smoke blown into your face, but it does have a little bit of a green cannabis tinge that is lightly smoked that starts to work in underneath everything else. And it's one of those deals where you do have to kind of get in a little bit closer and catch a whiff, and then you'll be like, ah, there it is. But it's not that type of cannabis note that's like right there in your face. So if that's what you're looking for, you'll be disappointed because it's not really like that. It's that sort of smoky green tone from earlier, just given a little bit of an extra touch, a little push of funk as the fragrance dries down. The one thing I will say is that in the mid, Hawas Viper does start to smooth out. So the opening, like I said before, it punches you in the face. If you're not ready for it, if you've never smelled Intense Oud, if you've never smelled Black Afghano and you don't know that scent profile, when you first spray it on, it's gonna be like, oof, oof, ooh, ew, what was that? Not that it's gonna disgust you necessarily, just that it's pungent, you know? It's got a good pop to it. But once you hit that mid, smooths out a lot, gets easier to wear. That dark semi-dankness is still here, just not as aggressive at that point. And you might also notice some of the notes in the fragrance and think it looks really interesting. You know, stuff like raspberry and coffee and stuff like that. You're like, man, how does all this work together? Tobacco and like I said, raspberry, coffee, all these other notes? And the answer is, they kind of don't. Like some of those notes that are in there, you might be able to pick up a little bit of them, but not really, not a whole heck of a lot. Maybe the coffee you could say is there in part of that like smokiness that it has, but not really, not for me anyway. What you're gonna get more of, at least to my nose through the mid as you start to head into that dry down, it's more of that smoky woodiness, kind of a dry, dark woodiness with bits of that aromatic, leafy, green vibe from the opening that carries over into the mid, kind of working underneath, giving a little more texture, a little more body. That's kind of what this starts to lean into. And maybe you can say that, you know, the cannabis mixes with the tobacco, sort of like a green tobacco leaf to an extent. But again, with the tobacco, it's not that sort of honeyed pipe tobacco vibe. That's not what this comes across as. There's also a faint fizzy like lift through the mid that keeps it from getting too heavy, you know, from just like sitting on your skin like stone. But definitely through the mid, Hawas Viper, we are talking niche vibes, definitely not coming across like a standard designer fragrance or a more wearable fragrance. Dark, a little bit brooding, smoky, dry. Speaking of that, into the dry down, yeah, that's pretty much it. That's pretty much the vibe that you're gonna get here. More of that dark woodiness coming out, that same smoky character from the opening carrying over into the mid, carrying over into the dry down. It does not, off my skin, sweeten up. So even though you see tonka in there, you see cinnamon, some of these other notes, saffron, like I mentioned before, that you think, well, you know, that's probably gonna give it a nice balance, right? It's gonna give it some more warmth. It's gonna give it a little bit more of a sexy character to it, right? Right? No, no. They stay pretty muted. Like maybe you can pick them up a little bit, but it is pretty much trying to be like Black Afghano from the opening into the dry down. Very similar kind of vibe, which is kind of interesting to me for a Rasasi Hawas release, but we'll get to that in a second. Because one thing this has to be is unapologetically, unbelievably, crack-headedly strong. Because we are talking about Black Afghano, which again, Nasomato comes in a little 30 ml bottle because it's just so freaking powerful. Extrait de parfum, right? It looks like black tar in the bottle. And this is a Rasasi Hawas clone of that fragrance or inspired by that fragrance. And what I mean by that is Rasasi Hawas fragrances always bring the funk, right? In terms of power. They last, they project. That's one of the things that they're known for. So how ridiculously, stupidly overpowered is this one? Well, to be fair, this is a bottle from October. So if you're one of the people out there who subscribes to the idea that it has to be matured, this one has not had that time. It opens up strong. it opens up attention grabbing. When you first spray this one on, it will immediately just jettison off your skin or paper or wherever you spray it. It'll start filling that room up. It has a bite, it has a punch. Now, as it dries down and it starts to smooth out, that performance actually kind of falls back a little bit. Now, it is not weak. That's not what I'm saying. But I will say, for being a Black Afghano Hawas clone, the expectation is the performance is not here or here, it's somewhere up there, right? Like this should easily be as strong as Hawas Black, just as far as the expectations go, and it's not. The projection to me is lighter than I expected. It's not weak. I'm not saying this is a skin scent or anything like that, and the longevity is actually really good. It sticks around. It'll stick for a long time. It's just once it does step out of that more aggressive vibe that it has off the top, and it starts to try to be a little more wearable, that's when it loses a little bit of that punch, a little bit of that bite. And you can kind of tell even just smelling it off a tester strip. You know, you do a few sprays and you can smell it, but it's not that kind of tester strip power where you sit it down right here and you can just keep smelling it emanating off there. To a lot of you, that's not gonna matter. But to some of you out there who do look to these fragrances to be like harbingers of doom as far as just projection goes, this could let you down a little bit. Again, it's not weak, it's just not as strong as I expected. Which brings me to the fragrance in general. Not really what I expected, for better or for worse. Because let's be real, when it comes to Rasasi Hawas, most people are expecting a fragrance that's gonna be wearable. You know, better or worse, that's the vibe, that's the idea. And there are definitely some people out there who are like, man, Rasasi just keeps, you know, hammering us with whatever the hype beast fragrance of the day is. You know, here, have Paradise Garden. Here, have Lamal Elixir, right? And so some people are like, yeah, give me something different. Give me something that other companies, other brands aren't doing left and right. And this is, to be fair, different. But at the same time, I'm not sure that there's a huge mass of people out there who are like, I know what I need. Hawas to do Black Afghano. That's what I need. I would imagine that overlap is not huge. Now this name does make more sense to me. Hawas Viper, right? That sounds dangerous. It sounds bold, and Black Afghano is definitely that. So it makes more sense to me than Hawas Cobra that came out before in a dark bottle, and then it smells like the safest fragrance ever made in imagination. That one is kind of like, how does this really go together? It really doesn't. This one at least makes more sense in that aspect. But it's just a questionable release to me as far as how many people even want this, if that makes any sense. Because it is not a mass appeal compliment monster. It doesn't really do that very well. And it's not the type of fragrance that I would think most users of the Hawas line are really seeking out. And it's also not as strong to me as the original Black Afghano. So it kind of misses that as well. The opening is harsh, and the opening to Black Afghano can be harsh to people as well. But that opening is gonna scare some people away. And while it does smooth out and it gets easier to wear, even in the dry down after it has cleaned up its act a little bit, it's still not necessarily that type of fragrance that people are gonna wanna wear over and over and over and over again, at least most people. Of course, some people will, right? There's some people that rock Black Afghano all day, every day, and more power to you. I'm just talking about where this fits into the Hawas lineup, and to me, it's just kind of like odd fragrance out to an extent. And while I can get super niche on you and say the quality here overall, the scent profile overall is more interesting than something like Hawas Ice or Hawas Fire, like I mentioned before. And you could make an argument and say that as it dries down, the dry woodiness that this has smells higher quality than some of those, less synthetic or whatever. The reality of the situation is, if you really like Black Afghano, and you don't like Gucci Intense Oud for some reason, and you want an alternative to Black Afghano, this will work for you. But for just about everybody else, it's a pretty easy skip. It's definitely different and more bold than your typical designer release nowadays, but just being different doesn't mean it's going to work better for most people, and I think this one won't. And I would say for me, as far as like my hierarchy of Hawas fragrances, this is toward the bottom. I think it's a pretty easy skip. I don't think you should pay that much money for this. The only people that should really pick this one up are people who specifically want a Black Afghano alternative, and they don't mind that this is gonna underperform the original a little bit and have a little more harshness to it. So there it is, Hawas Viper. For me, this is a fail. Not a big fan, at least for like 90% of people. I don't think it's gonna work that well. So there we go. There that is, coming up soon, Hawas Atlantis. Better, worse, we will see. Thank you guys for hanging with me here until the end. Again, if you are interested in this one, it's linked in the description. Black Afghano Fanboys, check it out. Stay safe out there, guys. Take care of yourselves. I'll see you tomorrow at the Fragrance Video. See you guys.